We're going to take a few minutes to learn about number lines. But first, let's go over some vocabulary that goes with number lines. A number line is just a line on which number values are marked at certain intervals or patterns. A span is the total distance between the beginning point on the number line and the ending point on the number line. To label something is to mark a specific value or number on the number line. And the ticks are those little lines used to mark the intervals of the number line. There can be different tick sizes to represent different intervals. When you're given a number line, you will usually see ticks on there already. And then sometimes the number line will give you the span, or it may just tell you the span. So for example, on this number line, the span is from 0 to 1. So that means the beginning point would be 0 and the ending point would be 1. So this number line is only showing one number from 0 to 1. It's just zoomed in so that you can separate it into smaller parts. So each of those little ticks represent one small part of the number line. So before you can begin labeling specific values or doing anything with the number line, you have to figure out what the ticks represent, what the pattern the ticks are showing of the number line. And how you begin doing that is just by counting the spaces that the ticks make. You don't want to count the ticks themselves. You want to think about the space that the ticks separate into. Now on this number line, you'll notice there are two different sizes of ticks. There's a small little tick and then there's a bigger tick. I like to start by counting the spaces between the bigger ticks just to make it faster. And so what I would do is I would start at the beginning and I would think about not the ticks as in the number of ticks, but the spaces that the ticks form. So from here to here, that would be one space between the two bigger ticks. From here to here, that's another space, and another, and another, and another, and so forth, until you get all of the spaces in your number line counted up. And then just go back and count your spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the bigger ticks break this number line into 10 different spaces. And since we've broken it into 10 parts, each part is going to be 1/10. So this first part is going to be 1/10 of the number line. The second part is going to be 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, and so forth. But when we go to label those tenths, we don't label it right in the middle because that's not exactly where 1/10 is. We label it at the end of the first space, the tick. So this tick would be 1/10 of the number line. So from here to here is 1/10 of the number line. You can write it as a fraction or you can write it as a decimal. So for the next tick from here to here would be the second tenth. And that just means that if you go from the very beginning to that point, you've gone 2/10 of the way of the number line. You can also write it as a fraction or as a decimal, 2/10. So this one would be 3/10 or 0.3. From here to there would be 4/10 or 0.4. And again, what that's showing, if you start at the beginning and you go all the way to there, that is 4/10 of the number line. And you can keep on labeling this spot. This tick would be 5/10. This tick would be 6/10. This tick would be 7/10. This one would be 8/10. This one would be 9/10. And this one would be 10/10. When you go to write your decimal, 10/10 actually equals 1 whole. So it would go back to just 1 or 1.0. So that is how you would label the bigger ticks. But the smaller ticks are not tenths anymore. So what we would want to do is see how many spaces make up this line in the smaller ticks. And what I can do is just count the spaces on one of them. So from here to here would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I know that there are 10 smaller spaces in each tenth. So then I could just count them by 10. So that's 10 there, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So for the little ticks, I know that there are 100 of them in this number line, so each one counts as 100th. So if I were to go label them, this first tick would be 100th or 0.01. The second tick would be 200ths, 300ths, 400ths, 500ths, 600ths, 700ths, 800ths, 900ths, 1000ths. 1000ths looks like that or like that. Notice that when you get to 1000ths, it really is the same thing as 1/10. The values are the same because remember the zeros at the end don't change the value. So if we started right here with the 3, this is actually 3/10, but we could also call it 30/100ths, so that when we start counting the little ticks, we know how to count. So if this is 30/100ths, then it would be 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40/100ths. Notice 40/100ths is the same thing as 4/10ths. Because when you add zeros at the end, it only changes how you say the number. It doesn't change the value that the number stands for. So oftentimes, a question will ask you to label or to put a star or a circle or put a dot on a certain value. And so in order to do that, you first have to figure out the intervals. You may have to label them, and then you have to carefully look for them. So if we were supposed to put, if we were going to put a star on 8200ths, what we would have to do first is find 8/10ths, and then we'd have to go 200ths more. So 1, 2, and this point right here would be where we would put our star to label 8200ths. The more you work with number lines, the easier they'll be to work with. So keep practicing, and if you have trouble, come back and rewatch this video. Good luck!